Hello, hello, and happy marvelous Monday, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that you are well today. Listen, this is what I do each and every Monday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I share information to help landlords as well as helping tenants. And today I am sharing um, a story which has made national headlines. It's about a property manager who um, has been found guilty or allegedly guilty of stealing tenant rent payments. But before I get into the heart of the subject today, just want to again say thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to those of you who are tuned in live on Facebook, live on LinkedIn. I'm on YouTube as well as Twitter. Thank you so much. I'm Carissa, your host, and I promise that my only goal today is to share information and to make sure that it's clear, it's relevant, and to get into a much needed topic. Um, However, the information that I share is not legal advice. I am sharing the industry's best tips as well as practices. So I do have information for landlords that I'm going to share a little later in the segment, as well as tips for tenants. So if this is your first time tuning in, show me some love in the comment section. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know which channel you're tuned in on, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Let me know where you're tuned in from, your geographical location. I have some viewers who are tuned in on the East Coast, have viewers who are tuned in on the West Coast. So let me know where you are, which platform you're watching from today. And then also, if you have questions, if you have comments, go ahead and throw it in the comment section. I will be certain to answer your questions today. In today's session or today's segment is all about a property manager who stole tenant rent payments. And yeah, so this is a hot topic. This is a live situation. And so I'm going to share what I know because I've had a lot of emails. I've had a lot of people to inbox me asking my feedback. So I mean, my feedback, I apologize. And then to also share it on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter to give a response. So I'm going to tackle that conversation today. And I want owners to really hear me, hear the information that I'm sharing today, because if you are allowing someone to manage your property, this could easily happen to you. So I'm going to share information today. And then, like I said, I'm going to share some tips for tenants as well to kind of safeguard them from having to go through this, because it is unfortunate that it happens. But let me just say that this is not the first time. And I don't believe that it will be the last time that it happens. And so my goal is to hopefully prevent those of you who are owners, to prevent you guys from going down this rabbit hole, because this was a costly mistake. And I believe that these type of situations could be avoided if you know what to look for. Okay. Then I'm also going to share some information for those of you who are looking for a property manager. You're looking for someone to manage your property, what to look for in that individual, that firm, or that company. Is that all right? All right, so let me just acknowledge some people who are here. Hello, Dr. Baker. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see that you're watching from the Facebook channel. Thank you for those of you who are tuned in on LinkedIn. All right, so let me get into this segment today, because this is a thought-provoking topic and it is engaging. And so I want you to keep in mind that when it comes to landlord and tenant talk, when I do these shows each and every Monday, there is nothing off script. There's nothing off the table. There is no topic that I will not cover, because I want to share relevant information that will impact the entire rental community. All right. So if you're watching the replay, thank you so much. And let me get into the discussion. It's all about how a property manager stole rent money from tenants. And if you find that this information is helpful, if you find that it's of value, or maybe you just want to share it with somebody else so that they can hear this information, please like, tag, and share this information. Sharing is caring. Okay, so before I get into the meat of this conversation, I just want to explain to some the role of a property manager. As a matter of fact, let me pull that up on screen. All right, so we all would know what a property manager's role is, and it's simply um, it's essentially to take the day-to-day responsibilities off of the owner. Okay. And so there's a property manager that's in the news right now. It's kind of buzzing all over the news and social media about how they stole tenants' rent payment. And then also, what really shocked me more than anything about this story is that they forged the the tenant's rent payment in their name. So they forged their name and they actually deposited those payments into their personal account. Like, I don't know anybody in their right state of mind who would do something like that, but clearly people will do stuff. Okay. I am almost to the point where I'm not surprised, because I have been in the industry. Uh-oh, looked like my lighting went out here. So I have been in the industry, in the property management industry, for almost 3 decades. So approximately 28 years I've been in the space of property management. And I know that I've said that, and many times I've said that nothing really surprises me, because I've seen a lot. And listen, people will be people at the end of the day. So let me just say that. But a property manager's role is essentially to take care of a variety of functions on behalf of the owner. So that could include maintaining the property, occupying, making sure that the properties are occupied, as well as generating income for the owner, right? And it's also to remove those day-to-day responsibilities from the owner. All right. So, but in that, there is a wealth of information. There's a really large range of functions and responsibilities and roles that are included in that. All right. So, but today I'm going to touch on 7 of the top responsibilities of a property manager. And so here's the first. They're responsible for tenant relations as well as leasing. So that includes advertising the rental property, marketing the vacant rentals or the units that are available that need to be leased up to make sure that the property attract the best potential tenant. All right. Property managers are also, in many cases, responsible for legal compliance. Right. And so that means that they are responsible for handling evictions, the eviction process. If a tenant violates the lease term, or maybe they're not paying the rent, or maybe they are disturbing other tenants in the community, and all the legal aspects, right, when there's a violation. All right. When it comes to tenant relations and conflict resolution, now here's why this story kind of had my head spinning for a little, if you will, because a property manager is supposed to act as the point of contact for tenants. They're supposed to address tenants' concerns, answer any questions that they have, and they're supposed to issue, anytime there is some sort of violation, property managers should be contacting these tenants to let them know that there is something going on and that needs to be resolved. Okay. Also, they should be marketing the property when there's a vacancy and making sure that they are managing these vacant units. Okay. So the next one is reporting and communication. So when there are issues, they should provide regular updates. They should provide reports to the property owner, including financial statements, occupancy status, maintenance activities, and other things. And so these are the top 7 responsibilities of a property manager that I do want to highlight today. So with this story that I'm sharing today, it was so intriguing to me to see that here it is, a property manager that's responsible for all of the responsibilities that I just shared, right? So you have someone that's responsible for doing all of this, and yet they're guilty of stealing tenant rent payments. Not only did they steal the payments that should have gone to the owner because they didn't own the property. So the owner hired this property manager to take care of all of these issues. And here they found themselves in a situation where tenants came in with their rent payment, right? And maybe, and I know that sometimes this happens in rental communities where tenants will bring in a maybe a money order or a personal check, and the name may not be on that payment. So they'll bring in a payment, they'll give it to the property manager to say, hey, this is my rent payment for August, or this is my rent payment for September, right? The property manager or the assistant, whoever, they'll write up the rent receipt and they'll deposit that right into the bank account. And so I do know that that happens because there are a lot of people who are not, maybe they can't read, maybe they can't write. And so they're very trusting. They trust that the property manager is going to write the name of the company on their money order or their check, and they're going to get credit for paying the rent for that particular month. Now, I have been in conversations with colleagues where property managers did not do the right thing, as the person I'm talking about today. So the situation is heartbreaking because not only did the property manager steal the payment, they deposited into their own account, but the tenants received a letter from management saying, hey, you still owe this rent money. All right. And so that's what I want to touch on today. Give me 1 second. So when it comes to, let me just turn my attention to owners, because when it comes to property managers, property management firms, there should be checks and balances in place to make sure that this doesn't happen, to safeguard your business and your rental property as well as your tenants. And so I do believe that owners do have a responsibility. Okay. And here are some tips for owners, because I want owners to really take heed to this story, because nobody is exempt. This can happen to anybody. And especially for those of you who have large properties and you are trusting property managers to manage your property, you're trusting other people to do the right thing. You're trusting that individual, that company to collect the rent and to make sure that you are receiving those funds, right? Because at the end of the day, it is a business. Okay. So here are some tips for owners. The first is that when it comes to property management companies or individuals, please make sure that you understand the importance of conducting background checks on the company or the individual. You want to make sure that you conduct a thorough background check, okay, on property managers. You want to look into their experience, if in fact they have the experience required for your rental property. Here's why that's important. Many, many years ago, I managed property and I specialize in affordable housing. And so owners who needed a manager or management firm to manage their property, they wanted to make sure that they had the best person or the best company to manage their property, but who also understood affordable housing. There are different types of housing communities. You could have tax credit. You can have properties where maybe the owner has or have contracts directly with HUD. I mean, there are so many type of housing programs. And so you want to make sure that whoever you are hiring to manage that property, they have that experience, they have the capacity, and they understand the rules, the regulations, and the policies of those particular programs. Now, if it's just a market tenant, or if it's a regular market, just market community, regular, just having tenants that are not participating in a lot of these housing programs, and those are considered market tenants, right? And so, but you still want those property managers to be knowledgeable. So you want to find someone who may have been educated, who's taken some sort of class. Maybe they are a licensed property manager, or maybe they have certifications in those specific type of housing programs. That's going to be strongly important. You want to make sure that they have strong financial systems in place to manage the property. You want to ensure that not only Are they good with finances, but that they have a robust system in place, or that they have property management software? Now, I've seen in some rental communities where property managers did not have a system in place, but they use Excel spreadsheets. And as long as there is some sort of system, that's what matters the most. As long as an owner, you are receiving reports, financial reports monthly. That's what matters. You want to have someone who's able to explain the financial reports that are and should be submitted monthly. Some should be submitted weekly. There are some reports that should be submitted quarterly and annually, but you want to have someone who can understand the finances and are able to articulate whatever is going on financially for you as well as that property. And then you also want to make sure that there is transparent communication. You can contact that property manager, you can reach them, they are available for you. And then I would strongly recommend, and this is not one of the tips that I've prepared to share with you, but as an owner, do regular pop-ups at your properties. And I know that sometimes you're busy, you're doing other things in life, and you may not have the time always to pop up. But I promise that if you just go a little deeper into your business operations without it being announced, you may find things that ordinarily you wouldn't find if it was a scheduled visit. I do want to share some tips for tenants today, because in this situation, the property manager stole the tenant rent payment, forged the property manager's name on those payments, deposited the payment into their bank account, and then worse than all of that. So of course the property manager was fired. But these tenants received a letter indicating that they still owed that rent money. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, Carissa, that's really insensitive, because the owner's employee, the owner's agent, the representative of that owner stole their money. And yet they received a letter saying, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we apologize that someone from our office stole the money. But by the way, the rent is still not paid and you owe that money. You know, that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. And so they are seeking legal action. They are trying to figure out what they're going to do, because in that community, they are low income family members, right? They're low income tenants, and they don't necessarily have that rent money to come up with. And so the question is, what can tenants do to protect themselves from this happening to them? So let me share some tips for tenants, and then I'm going to come back to the comment section because I see some comments are coming in. The first thing that I want tenants to know and understand is this: you can pay your rent electronically. Make sure that you are using secure payment methods. And at all costs, please try to avoid paying in cash or giving a blank check or money order directly to property managers. Because in this situation, this is one of the things that happened, or a couple of things that happened here. This property manager received the payment. I believe a few tenant payments didn't have a name on it. The company's name was not on it, right? So that's a big no-no. So as a tenant, when you're making your rent payment, write it out or stand there and wait for that individual to write out the name of the company. Make sure that you get a receipt. Do not walk away without receiving a receipt. Rent receipts can be printed. They could be handwritten. I've seen some property managers make a copy of the check or the money order, sign it, date it, and give it to the tenant. That will suffice as a rent receipt, because some people do not write legible hand-printed rent receipts. Some companies do, some don't. So whatever their method is to provide a rent receipt, make sure that you get that, okay? Pay your rent using an online secure method. You can transfer payments through your bank account or online platforms. There are a lot of places that landlords can use to allow you to pay your rent online and electronically. All right. You want to make sure that you keep a regular record of the payments that you are submitting. Keep a file cabinet or a file folder with all of your rent receipts for every month of the year. Make sure that you have a rent receipt, whether it's $1 or $1,000,000 that you're paying for rent. Please keep this for your records. This will help you to avoid going down a rabbit hole. This will help you if there are ever any discrepancies about how much you paid, when the rent was paid, because sometimes property managers will change. And in troubled communities, there may be high turnover rates for property managers, meaning that um, they can't, for whatever reason, they can't keep a good property manager. There's always one person coming in, they're fired or they leave or they quit and somebody else is coming in. And so you want to make sure that you have records for yourself. Okay. All right. Don't rely on someone to have or to maintain records for you. Please make sure that you have receipts, make sure that you have a record of it. And if you need assistance, maybe you can't read, maybe you can't write, get someone who you can trust to help you create some sort of organization of all of your rent receipts and payments. All right. Then also, I strongly recommend that tenants report suspicious behavior. If you suspect that the property manager, the assistant manager, the leasing consultant, or whoever in the office may be up to something and it's a little concerning, report that. Right? At the end of the day, I know that a lot of people, they work hard for their money, or maybe they are on fixed income from Social Security, retirement, VA, there are all sorts of income, right? And people um, don't deserve to be ripped off. This is a really heartbreaking story to have to share. But again, this is not the first time. I know that this is not going to be the last. Hey, Raina, thank you so much for tuning in today. Raina, you said this type of theft happens more than not all over the country. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's my pleasure to share this information, but unfortunately, it is heartbreaking. I've shared tips for landlords. I've shared tips for tenants. But what are your thoughts in this subject matter where this property management company, they have acknowledged that one of their employees is responsible for stealing tenant rent payments. And yet they sent a letter to the tenant saying, hey, we acknowledge this. However, your rent is still due. If this happened to someone that you know or love, what advice would you give them? Take a moment. Let me get your feedback on that. If you would, put that in the comment section for me. So if you are aware, you know that this has happened to someone that you know or love, what advice would you give your loved ones? What advice would you give your mother, your grandmother? What advice would you give the person that you care about? How would you tell them to handle this situation? Let me get your feedback on this, because I know that there are a lot of people who have elderly loved ones and parents who live in rental communities, and they are negatively impacted because of activities by management staff, representatives of the owner. It is heartbreaking. But what feedback would you give to someone that you know or you care about if this happened to them? So as we are coming into this last quarter of the year, I believe that we're going to see a lot of issues are going to start to pop up. I said it earlier in the year. If you've tuned in and you've followed me, you've watched me, whether on YouTube, here on this platform that you're watching on now, I said time and time again that we're going to start to see a lot more cases, a lot more lawsuits, a lot of issues and actions that are going to come against property managers. I said it early in the year. The pandemic has somehow crippled a lot of rental communities. And as a result of that, people were doing things that were not honest, things that were not fair, and things that were just downright unethical, right? And so now tenants realize that they have rights. They realize that their rights have been violated. Okay. And I do want tenants to know this is one thing that I always echo. So, as a landlord and tenant expert, I give advice for landlords, I give advice for tenants, I teach, I educate. This is what I do, right, by profession. I want tenants to know that you have a voice. And if you suspect that something is going on, say something. If you see something, say something. All right, so let me go here to the comment section. Raina, thank you. You said something similar is happening to your nephew who lives in North Carolina. It has been a nightmare. They've had to hire an attorney, which shouldn't even have to happen. The advice you gave about electronic payment is probably the best advice. That way payments can be tracked. Wow, Raina, that's heartbreaking to hear that you have a relative who's going through something similar. I'm hoping that this will turn out positive for them. But yeah, definitely make sure that there is a record of payments received. Like I said, sometimes in property management companies, there is a high turnover. In the rental community, a property manager may be in for a week, a month, a year, a few years, and next thing you know, another property manager will come in and they may not have a record of whatever happened previously. And that will leave that tenant in a really bad place trying to prove that they paid rent or not. And I do have viewers who tune in. They are tenants. They share their stories. And so I wanted to just make sure that I covered this today. This is a live situation. It's all over the social media. It's all over the news. It is heartbreaking because these tenants are still expected to pay their rent. Because when I looked at the story and I had to dig a little bit deeper, so from the owner's perspective, the owners are saying, hey, listen, we did not deposit the rent into our account. So technically, we as the owner have not received payment. Hey, Kim, thank you so much for tuning in from South Carolina. So in this situation, the owner is saying, we haven't received the payment. And because we haven't received it, then technically you still owe us. Although the owners have already acknowledged that it was someone who worked for them that stole the payment. And so it really just depends on what the laws are in that specific jurisdiction. One of the things that I always say is this: all laws are not the same. So from one jurisdiction to the next, Raina, I believe you're West Coast, right? You're Midwest. The laws are going to be different from, let's say, Kim, who's on the East Coast, right? So it just depends on state by state. From one jurisdiction to the next, the laws are not going to be the same. So please reach out to an attorney if you have questions pertaining to the laws in your area to find out what can be done. If you have a loved one who's experiencing this, try to get them some legal help. Contact a landlord and tenant attorney who can give advice on this. So I'm not an attorney, right? I'm a housing educator. So I just share practical tips. So for legal advice, please contact a landlord and tenant attorney for legal advice. Hello, hello. Happy Marvelous Monday. Okay, you said you have a question. You have a friend in Section 8. Have a friend who's on Section 8. Is the landlord responsible for wear and tear? The landlord don't want to put in new carpet. That's a great question. Thank you so much for tuning in, Damon. So it just depends on what's in the lease. And that's one of the things that I commonly say. I would look at what's in writing. So usually landlords may take the position that they will only provide service, maintenance, repairs, and improvements if it's absolutely necessary. So just because this tenant is in the Section 8 program doesn't mean one way or another that the landlord is or is not responsible for wear and tear. Because see, here's the thing. Section 8 does not have, let me just back up. Section 8 is a federally funded program. Okay. So it's funded on a federal level. but there are no guidelines. There are no federal rules that say that the landlord is responsible for this or is not responsible for that. Now, if this specific tenant was in another type of housing program, there are rules and regulations for different type of housing programs, but just a standard Section 8 housing choice voucher participant type of program, I would I would suggest to look at the lease, what's in writing, because that would determine or dictate who's responsible. And so, if you can get a copy of that lease, Damon, I would be happy to review it. I can give you my email address, but I can't give like just a generic answer. It really just depends on what's in writing, and also who defines what's normal wear and tear. Like, what is the issue specifically, right? So if it's, for instance, let's say something flooring related, right? Normal wear and tear, the over a period of time, the tenant has been there for maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The floor is worn, the carpet is worn out, and maybe the landlord may replace it, right? So my response could go a lot of different ways, but if you can give me a little bit more meat on that, I can kind of, answer that in a better way. So I do apologize. I don't know how long the carpet has been down. Is the carpet damaged? Are there holes in the carpet? And, so I don't really know. But now let me just say that if there is tenant damage, right? Let's just say that the tenant had a dog. I'm gonna go worst case scenario, and then I'm gonna come back because I just like to do that. I have viewers who have different perspectives, different views, and different situations, David. So just kind of bear with me for a minute, if you will. So let's just go worst case scenario. Let's just say hypothetically that this tenant has damaged damaged the carpet, right? Maybe they have a dog, or maybe there are some holes in the carpet because of maybe they have a pet, right? And the carpet is ripped, it's damaged, it's torn. In that regard, the landlord could hold that tenant responsible for that damage. But now, if this tenant has been there for an extended period of time, maybe they've been there for years, right? 5, 10, 15 years, then sometimes landlords will go ahead and replace the carpet, or maybe they will have the carpet clean, or they could say, well, Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, we are not willing to take on the cost of replacing the carpet, but we will allow you to do it. We will allow you to have the carpet professionally cleaned. So, it can go a lot of different ways, Damien, but I would be interested to see what's in the lease. I would be interested to know and understand like what's really going on with the carpet there. So I do apologize. I don't have a specific answer for you right now, but if you give me some more information, I can kind of look into it and give an update on that. All right, so today I just wanted to share from this heartbreaking story how a property manager stole tenant rent payments, forged the checks, and deposited the payment in their personal account. Like, that was just dumb. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. That was just flat out dumb, right? So they forged the payment, deposited into their bank account, and worse was that management, after firing that employee, sent letters to the tenants to let them know that they acknowledged that this has happened, and unfortunately these tenants were still asked to pay their rent, and so they are, and they should be, as they should, seek legal counsel to get an attorney to see what could be done about that. So if I get an update on the story, I will come back and share it with you. Listen, guys, my time is up. I thank you for yours. This is what I do each and every Monday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Facebook, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and Twitter. I bring information for landlords as well as tenants to impact the entire rental community. Okay, if you have questions, let me share my email address with you, because I want you to contact me if you have questions pertaining to this subject matter or any landlord and tenant subject matter, right? This is my email address here, info@landlordlife.com, info@landlordlife.com. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. If you have not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, please go to YouTube You can find me at Landlord Life. Smash that subscribe button, click that notification bell so that you'll be the first to know when I am live and online. I promise to bring topics that will be a benefit and helpful for the rental community. So whether you're a landlord, whether you're a tenant, or you know someone who is, please share this information. Sharing is caring. It costs absolutely nothing but your time to show up each week to watch this, to hear this information, or to watch the replay. Okay. All right. So that is it. That's all I wanted to share today. It is unfortunate, but again, I thank you for tuning in. I hope that you'll join me next Monday right here, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm going to say bye for now.